How's everyone doing this morning? Not bad. All right. So I'm taking a little bit of a different twist with my personal story this time, so bear with me if I read a little bit more than I like to, but hopefully we'll have some fun. All right, so good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I've been given the task of sharing with you my personal experiences with obesity. I really believe that this is an important practice for all of us, because when I was sitting in your chair, I found it very easy to uncouple the science and the research from the individual personal experiences that some of us face. So this is a good practice, and I hope you guys take a little something away from it. If you do take anything away from today, I hope that you're going to be a little bit more mindful of the target audience you're working for or working with. We truly appreciate everything that you guys do for us in your work, but we're people. We're not patients, numbers, or research statistics. So first thing I have to do is make my disclosure statement. No one pays me anything, so I have no conflicts of interest. All right, away we go. So for those that don't know me, I do have a background in training in kinesiology. So I got a PhD in kinesiology with my focus being on physical activity and childhood obesity. I then went on and did a postdoc on body mass index in children. And I currently am a contract faculty member at York University in the kinesiology department. I also do a little bit of teaching at Loyalist College. But if I'm going to be honest with you, that's not who I identify as anymore, or at least not as much as I used to. First and foremost, I'm a father. So this is the greatest privilege that was ever given to me. And here you got my son Declan on the left and my daughter Sawyer on the right. And I don't bring this up because I want to brag about how cool my kids are, and they are pretty cool. But it's relevant because everything I do, including standing here today, is to make the world a little bit better for them. I want to make a little bit of change, and I don't want them to experience what I did. So when I had my son, it was a little bit of a wake-up call for me, like it is for a lot of us who are dealing with obesity. It's kind of that moment where you're like, I gotta sort this out. I kind of had this mindset that if I could fix myself, if I could lose the weight soon enough, he would never remember me as fat dad. I never wanted him to remember the horrifically swollen version of myself that I saw myself as. So I figured I had about 3 or 4 years before those memories really stuck with him. So I worked really hard and I lost a bunch of weight. It all came back. The yo-yo that we all experience. I realize now that mindset I had was a little bit dysfunctional. And I've changed the mindset that I never want my kids to have the dysfunctional relationship with their body that I did. I want them to grow up in a world where body diversity is accepted and clinical obesity is treated with the dignity and vigor of any other chronic disease. So, this is me pre and post-op. So the guy on the left there was well over 350 pounds, hypertensive, severe sleep apnea, probably a little bit depressive, and not very productive. Guy on the right, don't have hypertension medication anymore, don't have to deal with my CPAP machine anymore, and I am much more productive. And probably most importantly, I'm a better husband and father. Okay. I also identify strongly as a member of the Canadian Obesity Public Engagement Committee that we have going on here. We've been here since Sunday. We've been doing a lot of work, and we've got some really interesting things coming down the line. So I encourage all of you to join us on that journey. Our mission is to build a vibrant community to empower people living with obesity. Empower them to feel comfortable and safe, seeking the help that they need, empowering them to have the evidence-based information they need, and empowering them to have a voice. We've kind of hijacked a phrase that we've heard, and it's nothing about me without me. And it means that we need to be involved in every step along the way. And I kind of equate this to the pedagogy of my teaching practice. I find that when I employ a student-centered approach to teaching, the uptake and effectiveness of my teaching improves exponentially. So too will a patient-centered approach to what you guys do. And if I can give you guys an example, one way that we can help is with that knowledge translation piece. If we are involved all along in every step in your practice or your research, we can turn around and with our outreach and advocacy, spread the word much faster and to a much larger audience than a publication. So, I call my struggle, my relationship with weight a struggle because that picture on the left is truly how it feels. It's an uphill battle and almost feels impossible to win. It's a bit unfair. Our bodies are magnificent and efficient survival machines. Weight loss that we perceive as beneficial and positive, our body sees it as a risk and triggers survival mechanisms that try to remedy the change. Now, many of you have heard Marty talk earlier this week and tell his story. It's shocking and powerful, and I can tell you that each and every one of us that deal with this disease have our own unique story. Many of you guys recognize this slide. It's all the factors that affect obesity, and looking at this, it hurts the brain. But I think it also makes it clear that there are no two cases of obesity that are the same. We all have a unique and complex interaction with these factors. I grew up in a loving home with a loving family. I have very strong relationships with all my family members. Reflecting back, our nutritional habits as a family at times were questionable, but not overly terrible. What was difficult for me was that the food had a much different effect on me than it did anyone else in my family. By grade 2, I was fully aware that I was defective. I was the fat kid in school, and I got bullied accordingly. The first time I took a beating at school, I did what you're supposed to do. I went and I told the teacher. But because they didn't see the assault, it was because they didn't see the assault, it was my word against theirs, and it was an unpunishable offense. I got no protection in my school from the people that I needed protection from. So, my dad, being the hero that he is, taught me a very important life lesson. And that was to protect yourself and not let anyone ever hurt you. He went to the school, sat down with the principal and the vice principal, and he essentially said, listen, if you guys aren't going to do anything about it, Ian's going to take care of it himself. So, in grade 2, one bully corrected with a bloody nose, and things changed for me drastically. Bullies became friends, and I was able to cope. Unfortunately, I can't teach that same lesson to my son now, because if I did, I'd be in jail, and my son would be expelled. From that point on, I dealt with my weight through sport. I seeked out and excelled in sports where my size was a benefit and actually revered in some cases. Nicknames like Moose or Tank replaced Fatty or Tubby, or my favorite, Fat and Patton. I got creative. And that's not to say that the hurt and discrimination didn't exist for me, but it wasn't the blatant and tragic abuse that you guys heard from Marty the other day. Mine was more like a death of 1,000 cuts, and each one was just a tiny little nick. I still got bullied, but in most cases I was smarter, stronger, and just a little bit crazier than the bully. It was known to be a mistake to bully me. What really hurt for me was the discrimination and shame brought on by those closest to me, or those in power. For example, I had a teacher in elementary school. For a couple years, there was numerous occasions where I dealt with him making fat jokes in front of my peers about me. Even family members. I love my father, and he is a wonderful role model. I actually model how I parent my own kids very much off of my father. But there are some things that stick out, and I don't think he ever intentionally intended to harm me, and there's nothing malicious about it, but there were certain words and interactions that stuck out. For example, he had a favorite joke when we traveled as a family. As we sat on the plane on the tarmac waiting to take off, he would tell this joke every single time, without fail. And he did it loud enough so that everyone could hear it. And essentially the punchline went that they shouldn't put me and my younger brother together on the plane. He also had a little bit of a weight problem. They shouldn't put us together on the plane because if they did, we'd just go in one big circle. Family would laugh, strangers would laugh, even the stewardesses would laugh, and me and Mike would just kind of grin and bear it. I continued to be the fat kid in class all through high school. Sports were my sanctuary. I excelled in Olympic-style wrestling. Now in wrestling, like many combative sports, the idea is to be as big as possible while still making the desired weight class. So we employed a strategic method called weight cutting. And if any of you know anything about it, I look back on it, it's dangerous and stupid. Heavyweight was my weight class. It was either 286 pounds or 265 pounds, depending on the tournament that I was entering. It was common practice and expected and actually encouraged that you cut weight. So on a weekly basis, I would be walking around 300 pounds. That was my walking weight while I was competing, 2 hours a day, training, doing runs, going to the gym. I was 300 pounds. But I needed to weigh in at 286 pounds. So Thursday morning, I had started my deprivation. I would eliminate food, and I'd start restricting my water intake. Still going about my day, training, going to practice, work, school, all that stuff. Fridays were a complete dehydration day. No fluid intake whatsoever until weigh-ins at 4 p.m. The idea was to sweat out the last 8 to 10 pounds by running and doing stairs in an obscene number of layers of clothes. After weigh-ins, the team would routinely go for a post-cut binge at Eastside Mario's, where we had unlimited breadsticks and pasta. It was a weekly routine: cut weight, make weight, gain weight. Cut weight, make weight, gain weight. By the time I stepped on the mat the next morning, I was easily back up to close to my 300 pounds. So it's essentially a way of kind of cheating within the rules, where if your weight class says you're 265 pounds or whatever, you're actually wrestling and you're 290 pounds. And it's very common in combative sports. Making 265 was a little bit more difficult, as you can imagine. I still walked around at 300 pounds. I essentially did something similar, but I would start my deprivation probably the week before a little bit, or really heavily on the Monday before the Friday weigh-in. As long as by Friday morning I could get my weight within that 10-pound range, I knew I was fine. However, because this was so draining throughout that week, I wasn't able to do my sweat runs. So instead, I would sit in a sauna and peel the sweat off me with a credit card so that my body would have to produce more sweat. 1.5 hours later, I made weight. Miserable, non-functional, but on weight. A binge, and the next morning, back up to 290 pounds and ready to compete. I look back now and I can imagine that this probably had a pretty significant part of my journey with my weight, and it probably irreversibly damaged my metabolism. A back injury kept me off the mats, and the weight skyrocketed. Before my surgery, I actually felt like the fat was sucking the life out of me. I woke up one morning and, not joking, honestly felt that this was the day that it was going to kill me. I was going to die. I didn't. I'm here. I run 5Ks. I'm a better husband, better father. I'm a way better teacher than I was. And I'm much more comfortable with my journey. I still struggle. I have to be diligent. I have put weight back on post-op. I've gotten that under control and managed it. But I will never be rid of this disease. It's something I'm going to be struggling with forever. Thanks for listening.